was simple: fly over Great Britain, deliver the payload, and continue on to a base in North Africa for refueling and debriefing. During the flight, Air Force Captain Bruce Kolka was called by the pilot of the plane, Captain Earl Kohler. Earl noticed a light in the cockpit indicating the bomb harness locking pin hadn't engaged, meaning the bomb could roll about the cabin freely in the event the plane suddenly shifted too hard in one direction. He sent Bruce to the cargo area to fix the pin. With no easy way to re-engage the pin, Bruce took hold of the straps keeping the bomb in place. As he pulled himself up, he accidentally triggered the emergency release pin. The bomb fell out of its harness and down to the bomb bay doors below. Thankfully, it didn't detonate, but the impact combined with the object's massive weight and forced the bay doors open. The bomb plummeted toward the earth from 15,000 feet above. Meanwhile, in Mars Bluff, South Carolina, two young girls were playing with their cousin near a playhouse their father had built for them in the woods next to their home. The bomb hit the playhouse, and when it went off, it disintegrated the structure. Both girls were thrown back, and their father, a former World War II paratrooper, was also injured, as were his wife and son. 7 buildings within the vicinity saw significant damages as well. A nuclear blast is capable of decimating anything within 16 square miles, and yet not a single person died. The only structure that fell was the playhouse in the woods. And how could it be? Simple. The bomb hadn't been loaded with its nuclear core, which was still up above on the plane. The B-47's mission hadn't been to eradicate the United Kingdom, but to use it as a testing site. Despite our differences, we haven't been at war with England in many, many years. During the 1950s, the United States and the UK worked out a deal which would allow the US Air Force to test nuclear bombs on British soil in order to record the accuracy of the drops. This time, though, the plane hadn't even left the United States airspace before the problem was noticed, nor had its dangerous cargo been primed for a full-scale nuclear assault. Instead, when the Mark 6 landed on the South Carolina playhouse, regular explosives inside detonated, which obliterated that playhouse and left an impressive 70-foot crater in the family's backyard. Like I said before, no one was killed, although the injuries the family endured earned them roughly $54,000 from the U.S. government, close to $500,000 today. The crater is still there, too, indicated by a historical marker and an access sign. So even though the United States hasn't dropped a nuclear bomb on another country in almost 80 years, it was responsible for the first, and hopefully last, nuclear attack on its own soil. The USS Sea Dragon was a Skate-class nuclear-powered submarine, meaning it was designed to be smaller and cheaper to produce for the U.S. Navy than other subs, like the USS Nautilus. It was launched in 1958 and ran until it was decommissioned in 1984. During those 26 years, the Sea Dragon conducted a series of missions on behalf of the United States military. It made quite a name for itself thanks to its smart and resourceful crew, led by Captain George Peabody Steele II. The Sea Dragon was built as an attack sub intended for Arctic waters, meant to destroy enemy submarines near and under the polar ice cap. For her first mission, the Sea Dragon was ordered to travel from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific via the North Pole. She was supposed to navigate through the Davis Strait between Greenland and Canada before entering the Parry Channel in the Canadian Arctic. This route was more commonly known as the Northwest Passage, and very few ships had ever made it through successfully. Almost every ship and Arctic explorer who attempted it in the past had ended up turning back, deterred by the massive amounts of ice blocking the way. The Sea Dragon, though, was different. It had no intention of going through the ice. It would instead slip beneath it. Now this, of course, presented no problems, since no large vessel above or below the water had ever navigated the passage before. No one knew what to expect. Charts and maps of the area were almost non-existent, and the passage's depth was unknown. There was a good chance the Sea Dragon could get stuck in a channel that was either too narrow or too shallow to pass through, and the mission would be over. However, rather than relying on sonar to help guide them through, Captain Steele decided to supplement modern technology with something a little more old school. He pulled out his copy of Sir William Edward Parry's 1819 journal, which described the methods he used in navigating the channel. Steele also had a dedicated team on board whose job it was to chart all icebergs they passed so they could find their way back, as well as make things easier for the next sub to attempt the drift. It took almost a month, but after a series of close calls with some massive icebergs, the USS Sea Dragon successfully completed its journey through the Northwest Passage on August 21st of 1960. 4 days later, it arrived at the North Pole. Now, Captain Steele didn't just want the Sea Dragon to be the third submarine to have ever reached the North Pole. He wanted his trip there to be special, so he enlisted the crew to participate in a unique test of skill and ingenuity. He had them draw out a large diamond on the ice, a baseball diamond. That alone would have made the voyage unique, for sure. The first baseball game ever played at the North Pole. But Captain Steele took the idea even further. He had the crew set up the diamond as close to the pole as possible. The result was a baseball game unlike any other. It literally couldn't be played anywhere else on Earth. Because of the diamond's position, the batter who hit a home run would end up circumnavigating the globe as he rounded the bases. A ball hit into right field would cross the international date line into the next day, while a ball hit to left field was caught on the same day. However, if it was thrown to first base, it wouldn't be caught until tomorrow. It gets better though. If a fly ball was caught in right field, then the batter wouldn't technically be out until the next day. However, a ball thrown to second or third base would have been thrown back in time 24 hours. So now a game that normally took a few hours to play ended up taking several days until a winner could be declared. Now, a lot of sports announcers like to say that it all comes down to how the game is played. But just this once, something different took priority over the skills of the players. It's not always how you play the game that makes the difference, but where you play it. I hope you've enjoyed today's guided tour of the Cabinet of Curiosities. Subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or learn more about the show by visiting curiositiespodcast.com. This show was created by me, Aaron Mahnke, in partnership with How Stuff Works. I make another award-winning show called Lore, which is a podcast, book series, and television show. And you can learn all about it over at theworldoflore.com. And until next time, stay curious. Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. Any harebrained scheme or wild new idea is typically met with the same reaction: when pigs fly. To many, the idea of airborne livestock is unheard of. After all, it's not like pigs have wings, do they? However, organizers of the 1930 St. Louis International Air Exposition needed something new to enthrall audiences. Now, you wouldn't think that an air show in 1930s Missouri would need a gimmick to keep spectators entertained. Pilots performing aerial tricks overhead should have been enough, but the people demanded more. They wanted to see something they'd never seen before. So the show organizers looked for a new act. Something bold, something daring, something bizarre. And that's when they turned to Ollie. She went up on February 18th of 1930 in a Ford Trimotor. The three-engine prop plane traveled a total of 72 miles from Bismarck, Missouri to St. Louis. People on the ground watched in awe as a team of scientists and a farmer named Ellsworth W. Bunce went up along with her. Bunce crouched beside her with a bucket and his hands ready to pull on her udders. If you haven't guessed it by now, the Ollie I'm referring to was no pig. She was a cow. A Guernsey cow, to be exact, and a very productive one at that. It was said that she had to be milked 3 times a day, far more than her bovine colleagues on the farm. Because of her overabundance of milk, Ollie was chosen for the unique honor of being the first cow to fly in an airplane. As the plane flew, Bunce was able to procure 24 quarts of milk from her, which he packaged up in brown cartons and parachuted down to the audience. Famous aviator Charles Lindbergh was said to have caught one for himself. But I know what you're thinking. Why put a cow on an airplane? Well, scientists had wanted to test the effects of high altitude on livestock, and the St. Louis International Air Expo was in need of a new kind of attraction. What better way to solve both problems at once than by putting a 1-ton dairy cow in a small metal tube and firing her thousands of feet into the air? The experiment worked, and Elm Farm Ollie, as she came to be known, was awarded several firsts. She was the first cow to fly in an airplane, and because of her, Ellsworth Bunce became the first man to milk a cow on an airplane in flight. Ollie's achievement is still remembered today, just not in a way anyone might have expected. She became so popular that an operetta was written about her called Madame Butterfat, written, of course, by the composer Muccini. It tells the story of how Ollie threatened to unleash a gigantic cow pie in the plane's cabin unless her milk was dropped to the poor children below. The production is still performed each year at the National Mustard Museum in Middleton, Wisconsin, featuring such songs as Bovine Cantata in B-flat major. And yes, there is indeed a National Mustard Museum. In fact, the museum also celebrates Ollie each year in a festival known as Elm Farm Ollie Day. Why Wisconsin when Ollie hailed from Missouri? Well, Wisconsin is the dairy capital of the U.S. It produces more milk than any other state in the country. But the Mustard Museum connection seems a bit more strange until you hear the curator explain it. Apparently there's an old Wisconsin saying that goes something like this: a cow who cuts the mustard is a cow who can be trusted, and no cow is more trusted in Wisconsin than Elm Farm Ollie. Giovanni Aldini was a scientist like his uncle Luigi Galvani. Now, if that name sounds familiar, that's because it's where we get the term galvanism. Galvanism is the contraction of a muscle when exposed to an electrical current. If you've ever seen someone get tased, you've probably seen galvanism in action. Toward the end of the 18th century, Aldini traveled extensively, performing grotesque experiments before captivated and disgusted audiences. He would lob the head off an animal, then hook it up to a battery and demonstrate how its jaw would open and close, or how its eyes would move about in their sockets. To many, the animal looked like it was somehow alive again. Aldini took his research further and began experimenting on humans. He was one of the first doctors to practice electroshock therapy on the brain, claiming it could be used to cure a number of mental illnesses. However, his greatest experiment was yet to come, and it would change the world in unexpected ways. A London man named George Forster had been convicted of murdering his wife and child. The trial was scheduled quickly, and witnesses called in to testify. During the trial, Forrester's mother-in-law explained how her daughter and grandchild had gone to see him one Saturday afternoon in December of 1802. Apparently, he and his wife didn't live together, despite her insistence that they share a home as a family. She and the child left on Sunday morning. On Monday, their bodies were found in the Paddington Canal. It took almost no time for the jury to find Forster guilty. The court sentenced him to hang, followed by a dissection of the body shortly after. And Forster was despondent. Not only had he lost his family, but hanging was not a wholly effective method of execution. Death row inmates had been known to lose consciousness, giving them the appearance of having died, before being dissected alive on the exam table afterward. And that was Forster's greatest fear. So he fashioned a knife out of what he could find in his cell and attempted to end his own life before the hanging. It didn't work. With all other options dried up, Forster decided to come clean. He confessed to his family's murder, how he hated his wife and had brought her to the canal twice before, but couldn't find the nerve to end her life until that third and final visit. The hanging proceeded as planned, and Forrester's body was quickly sent off to be examined. The pace of the trial, hanging, and dissection of the victim's body were